Hello and welcome to the round so far, brought to you by Amy. I'm Riley Beveridge. This is Kane Cornes. Kane, just when you thought you'd seen it all, we get a round like this, the most dramatic round of footy of the season. Let's get to our big story. It came from Marvel Stadium where the Mac attack, Mac Andrew, he had a frustrating night. This was 30 seconds before the big moment of the day where Ben King takes him aside and says, hey, put your frustrations aside and you can win us the game. And he did.
How good is this, Mark? Oh, what a moment it is. This is the best day of footy we've seen this year. And as you said, it's been such a great season. So many twists and turns. This was the full stop to the best day of football this year. What a moment. Nothing better than a player kicking the winning goal after the siren, particularly for Gold Coast, who just have not been able to win away from home. You thought that was going to be the case again today. It was a mixed bag for Mac Andrew, but that is a moment clearly that the Gold Coast Footy Club and him and his family will never forget. So to have the nerve, the composure, firstly to take the genuine contested mark in a pack and then finish like that, just a brilliant day of footy.
A dramatic afternoon as well. So Jade Gresham thinks that he's won the game for Essendon with about 2 minutes to go.
Free kick or not?
I think it's there. He pushes him square in the back. I think it's there, but it gets brought back.
Look, I think you're right. That is technically a free kick. I think we've seen them left and let go a lot this year in those moments. Not in the marking contest, but in general play. But with 2 minutes to go, that was a big moment. There was a lot of big moments. As you said, they kicked 1 goal 9 in the last term to 2 goals straight. They kick accurately. Stringer kicks 3 points. They win. They win inside 50s by 9. A lot of the stats that they won dominate uncontested possession, but something mentally fragile about this footy club. They start the season so well.
Yeah.
They win last week against Fremantle in a game they're not supposed to win. And in a game they rock up and they must win against a side who hasn't won away from home this year at home with your season on the line. And to serve that up, I would hate to be an Essendon supporter.
We'll get to the Bombers in just a minute, but Mac Andrew, it was his night. So fantastic, but not always, because he kicked 1 goal in the first half, so we know he's been playing forward. But then Essendon got stuck into him. He gave away a 50-metre penalty. There was a melee right on half-time, and it looked like he was about to explode. It looked like he was about to lose his head. But all credit to him. He comes out, he kicks 2 goals early in the third term, finishes with 4 for the night.
There's the 50.
And finishes with the match winner.
There's the 50 just before half-time. He didn't think he'd give the free kick away. He gives away a 50, and then 50 seconds later, this happens. So they're all involved. Look, it added a bit of spice to the game that you thought, not a whole lot riding on this. We probably thought Essendon were going to run away with it. But you love a bit of niggle. You love a player that is really competitive. And even more so, you love a player with the skills to be able to do this. So I think probably in time he's still going to be the best intercept defender in football, because I'm just not sure how Gold Coast will structure their forward line with Jed Walton, Mac Andrew and King. It seems a little bit too tall for me. I think it can only be 2 of those, not 3. But it's been an inspired move by Damien Hardwick to push him forward, and it's always nice to have a swingman who can play at both ends.
I said it last week, Essendon beating Fremantle at the MCG, a premiership contender, was inevitable because they always rise for the big occasion. But them losing to Gold Coast haven't won on the road for 456 days before tonight. Them losing to Gold Coast the very next week was just as inevitable for this football club.
There's a lack of leadership. I don't know, there's something intrinsic about this football club that is really concerning. I think Brad Scott is the right coach for the group. I absolutely do. I think he sets high standards and he's not going to put up with this, and he'll start to weed out those players that don't want to stand up in games that you should just win. You just have to find a way to win that game of football. It meant so much to the footy club, but for some reason it doesn't mean enough to the players, and there is genuine lack of leadership.
Let's get to Optus Stadium now, where another massive result in the context of the top 4, where Geelong came from behind at 3-quarter time to beat Fremantle. They kicked 3 of the 4 goals in the last quarter. They leapfrog into the top 4, the Cats.
This is an amazing win. Like, they just find a way. Like, pound for pound, talent for talent, the youth, the speed that Fremantle have playing at home in front of a record crowd between these two sides. No way Geelong should win this game of footy. There is no way. But they did. They just found a way, and it was a couple of their veterans, and we'll get to Dangerfield in a moment, but they just took it on. And the thing with Fremantle, because they are such a low-scoring side, the lowest scoring side in the top 8, they always give you a chance. They don't put you away when they have the dominance. Thought they broke down with their last kick and their entry and their connection between mid and forward. That was obvious today, and that really hurt them in the end.
When you say they always give opposition sides a chance, it's none more reflective than in them leading at 3-quarter time and then losing. So they've lost 5 games having led at 3-quarter time this year, more than any side in the competition. Once again today, minus 15 in the final term. I think if Hawthorn wins against Carlton on Sunday, they are in genuine danger of missing the finals.
They'll miss.
If Hawthorn wins, I think there's a genuine chance, because they've got a tough couple of games. They play the Giants away next week, then Port Adelaide at home in the last round. They needed to pinch one of these last 2 games. They lost to Essendon last week. They lose to Geelong today.
And if they do, it'll be because of this. So I always like to look at that because you go, how well drilled is this club? How much time do they spend on the little things? How much time do they spend when you are protecting a lead or when you're chasing a lead from behind? Well, not enough, judging by that. That's a game that they had to win, particularly after last week when Essendon came from 19 points down to win. So that's a disastrous loss. Yes, no Tracy, no Darcy, but Darcy's got the body of a 34-year-old already, so I'm not sure how often he's going to play consistently. Jackson was beaten by Stanley. That is unacceptable. Sarong was the one that tried to get them going, but to cough up another lead like that when your top 4 hopes and premiership hopes are on the line, it's a bad loss.
The Cats needed their captain to stand up, and he did. Patrick Dangerfield is our Saturday star. He was fantastic. So last quarter alone, he has 7 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 3 clearances and a goal. Finished with 11 clearances for the game.
I wonder if he's the most competitive player of the last 20 years, Patrick Dangerfield, because he missed a goal in the goal square where he was running into an open goal square, and you could tell it really stung. And then after that moment in the last quarter, he's gone, there's no way I'm going to let us lose today. And he had that look on his face. There's been no better player when the ball's in a phone box. Who can win it in that phone box? Dangerfield. He's like a bull terrier. Footy's there, I'm going to win it. And he was back to his absolute best today. And he needed to be, because I thought they had some senior players that were down on form today. It was a frustrating game. This is big. He's always been able to do that. So when game was on the line, he was the one that just put the bit between the teeth and said, we're not losing this game of footy.
Another crazy game at the Gabba as well, where the Giants kicked the last 6 goals of the game to roll Brisbane. They were 30 points down at quarter time. But then this stunning last quarter, they're right in the premiership mix again.
The first quarter was as bad as they've seen. It was like Sydney versus Port Adelaide last week. Absolutely smashed in contested footy and everywhere. So the sign of a very mature side and a very good young coach. Well, he's young enough, Adam Kingsley, inexperienced I should say, to regroup at quarter time against the premiership favourite and to turn this game around. Now, what we're showing here is Cadman and Jones. So you're going, how exciting is this if you are a Giants fan for the next 10 years? Cadman now belongs. He kicked 3 and he looks like his shoulders are bigger and he's got a great contested mark. I thought he played a disciplined role where they were trying to get Hogan to the matchup that they wanted to get. And then Jones, your man. I mean, he's just freakish. Brent Daniels was amazing. And the best part about it, which we'll get to shortly, is they had nothing from Toby Green, just 4 touches.
We will get to that very shortly. But they're making a habit of starting slow and then overpowering sides are the Giants. So have a look at this. This is in the last few weeks. They were down by Carlton. We know how far down they were at quarter time against the Blues. Melbourne, they fought from behind. Hawthorn, they fought from behind. 30 points down against the Lions today. They came back and won. Their scoring power, we've spoken about a couple of sides who can't score tonight. They can score. They can outscore anyone.
100%. So this says to me a couple of things as well. Very well coached and they can adjust on the run and well led. The players can absorb a change in game style or an adjustment like Whitfield going forward today. Went to Zorko. Nice adjustment from Adam Kingsley. The players don't get overawed by that and they can adjust. Having said that, you don't want to do that every week. And we've seen that from Sydney. You don't want to start slowly every week. But the other point is they're just a fit, hardened side. So, yeah, as we said, the season's had so many twists and turns and we know that they can perform on the big stage, this group.
Their 2 key forwards were unbelievable. Aaron Cadman, it was a breakout game for him. He kicked 3 goals. But Jesse Hogan, another 3 goals, moves clear in the Coleman medal as well.
So this tactic where, and they did it last week against Hawthorn, where Hogan really is disciplined to get the matchup he wants. Now that takes a lot of discipline from the teammates around him. So at times it was Cadman who goes over to Harris Andrews. See, that's Joyce. That's not the matchup that Brisbane wanted. They wanted, and that's big Oscar McInerney. They wanted Harris Andrews on Jesse Hogan, but the Giants were so disciplined that Hogan goes over to Joyce and then Cadman, or it was Grashevsky, went over to Harris Andrews, and it caused a lot of confusion. And it's almost like, who's going to give in first? And once again, like last week when Hawthorn gave in, Brisbane gave in on that matchup today.
Full credit to Brendan Starcevic as well. A fantastic job on Toby Green, the Giants captain. Kept him to his 4 disposals. It looked like his tempers were about to boil over at some stage.
Is he the hardest defender to get a kick on? Is there a harder defender to get a kick on in football right now? I'm going to say no. When he played on Rankin and he had Isaac Rankin that frustrated that he bumped him off the ball and concussed him and got 4 weeks for it, I thought, gee, this guy's pretty special to be able to do Rankin and then to be able to do a player like Green. And then nothing better as a teammate than playing alongside someone who you know can go and play on the opposition's most dangerous forward, be that a small, quick player or a medium size like Toby Green or a little bit taller that he can play above his height and get that job done. So that's as good a job as anyone has ever done on Toby Green.
It certainly was. He was fantastic, Brendan Starcevich, in a losing side. Let's get to the MCG now, where Port Adelaide just managed to overcome the Demons by 2 points. They go back into the top two. Here are some of the last quarter moments. They kicked 2-1 in the last term. And this is what we were just talking about. Melbourne just couldn't score when they needed to at the death.
Big moment here. They're about to have a shot from 50 and Cozzy Pickett. That's not a free kick. That's an umpire who inserts himself in a game that doesn't need to, so that shouldn't have been paid. But Cozzy had a huge night, 20-plus disposals, kick 4, and you thought he was going to be the match winner. And then Knuckle comes on as the sub. Todd Marshall got concussed. He kicked that goal. This one you thought was set up for Connor Rozee, the captain, to put Port Adelaide 6 points in front, but it was a score review and found out to be a point. And then this with Jace Burgoyne, you thought he's going to take a contested mark in the goal square, but he doesn't. In the end, it's a game that should never be seen ever again. Ever again. It was a side, a Melbourne side, who are really disciplined. They shut Port Adelaide down through the corridor. I thought their pressure was elite, but they didn't want to score Melbourne, and that's the biggest problem for them. That game style that they produced tonight, whilst it was admirable, whilst it was frustrating, whilst they made it hard for Port Adelaide, it will never, ever win you a premiership. So Simon Goodwin at the end of the year has got to go, okay, contest and defence is all he ever talks about. Let's talk about scoring, because that's pretty important in this game.
Well, they were plus 30 for contest and still lost the game. Jason Horne-Francis, his final term was unbelievable. 9 disposals, 6 marks. He was just everywhere when the game was to be won. So if you look at this vision, Kane, this is all in the last 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 minutes left in the game.
6 marks in the last quarter, as you said. 1 big free kick, puts his head over it here in a critical moment when they're only 1 point up. And I don't know, I reckon he's won 15 games. He's been influential in 15 games late for Port Adelaide already. And that's, in 2 seasons. So the amount of times that he stands up when games are there to be won, he's one of the more clutch players in football, and if he wasn't out there tonight, Port Adelaide lose by 3 goals. But having a huge season, 27, 2 goals, 13 marks, and was the best player on the ground by a mile.
What about Clayton Oliver? Because you've been vocal in your criticism of him throughout the season. Only 5 disposals to half-time.
Well, they didn't know what to do with him. So at the start of the second quarter, they put him to half-back. And this is the result. There is a lack of intensity. He's lost all his power and fitness. So that disposal there is typical of Clayton Oliver this season. And then the turnover, he can't go. So he's lost his burst from stoppage. He's lost any damaging disposal. And then he can't run and he can't cover the ground. So Port Adelaide put Willem Drew to him. And the opposition know it. They're now going after him. Chris did it against Melbourne earlier on in the year when he just ran away from Clayton Oliver. So I think it's a big story. His drop-off, clearly we know the issues that he's had, but he's not fit enough. He's now a liability for the Melbourne Footy Club. Put a line through him this year. Get him right. If he's got a sore hand, get it fixed and put it on the line and say, if you want to be a Melbourne player, come back and have the biggest pre-season that you've ever had, because he cost them severely tonight.
So you think he can get it back?
Well, it's up to him. Yeah. He's clearly got the talent. And a lot of players have a poor season, don't they? And they bounce back from a poor season. So he has a resume that says, we're going to give you a little bit of grace and we're going to back you in. And I don't know what other choice they have. They've got him for 6 more years at $1 million. So he'd want to turn it around. Otherwise, it's going to be a dire situation for Melbourne. Simon Goodwin has backed him in and said, we're not trading him. I'd watch this tape and have a think whether that's the right course of action.
Let's get to Friday night footy at the SCG now, where Sydney just managed to get over the line against Collingwood, and it was led by Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner in the last quarter. 14 disposals and a goal each from these two. They were fantastic when the game was there.
Have you seen a better last quarter from 2 midfielders? I don't know if I had. Isaac Heaney, honestly, his last quarter was amazing. He was everywhere. So there's Warner. So that's the brilliance of Chad Warner, but the two of them, there were some really key moments in tight where they're able to absorb the pressure and then get the ball on the outside. As I said, Heaney's everywhere. So 14 each in the last quarter. They both scored. And after a couple of flat weeks for both of them, like this stuff here's the stuff I'm talking. Absorb that pressure and then get the ball to the outside to your teammate who then has time and space. And we saw that. And then defensively as well. Excellent. So there'd been some pressure. They were under the pump. Their top 4 hopes are on the line with probably 20 minutes to go in the last quarter. They storm home, kick the last 4 or 5 goals, and they're probably going to finish on top now, all thanks to those two.
You mentioned they were 27 points down in the last term. Then Errol Goulden bobbed up with the match winner, and you want to talk us through it, Kane?
Well, I love this. So Sidebottom does the right thing. He's had Errol Goulden all night, done an amazing job, kept him to 14 touches, his lowest since the 2022 grand final. He hands over, because that's what good team players do, because he got blocked, you got to hand over, and he went to Heaney. He just didn't read it, Quainer. He just got the ball goggles on. The minute he took his eyes off Errol Goulden, he didn't do his job for Still Sidebottom, who needed him to do it. So watch Quainer's eyes, and he just looks up at the ball. I call that the ball goggles. When you do that, you lose your man. The last thing you want is your man to get in behind you, particularly a player as deadly as Errol Goulden. One step, make you pay. And in that moment, Isaac Quainer wasn't disciplined enough to help his teammate out Still Sidebottom, and he would have been flat with that.
Great vision. There was a couple of contentious umpiring decisions throughout, both in terms of deliberate and a 50-metre penalty late that wasn't paid. This is Collingwood coach Craig McRae speaking about it after the game.
I reckon if it was at the MCG, it would have been paid. Yeah, there's definitely an advantage for a home crowd. Yeah, like I thought it was a 50-metre penalty to the letter of the law. I'm sure the AFL will come out and say it's a free kick or 50-metre penalty. That's where there's a lot of deliberates tonight too. That was a bit of a circus, so I'm sure they'll come out and justify that too. But umpires don't always get it right.
Now, it doesn't sit overly well with me, given they play 17 games in Melbourne this year. I mean, every side, when you go to a vocal away ground, gets decisions that go against you. I don't think that was to blame for them coughing up a 27-point lead late in the game. Yes, it was probably a 50-metre penalty, but 6 weeks ago, it was probably a 50-metre penalty when two, three, four Collingwood players run over the line against North Melbourne.
I'm not going to be as kind as you. That is out of line. That comment there is out of line. Now, to your point, yes, he's correct. But when you play 17 games at the MCG, you cannot be complaining about playing away or not getting the rub of the green on a home ground. They have the biggest fixture advantage, the biggest advantage of any team in the competition every year with the draw that they get and the lack of travel in the air. So don't sit there after a game where you coughed up the last 5 goals and lose and blame it on one decision because it wasn't at the MCG.
Now, Craig McRae speaks a lot about playing the moments, but you can see here the Pies' tactics late in games. They haven't been playing the moments late in games because you can notice it here that they've actually been giving up surges of goals. So do they try and play for the win too early in games when games are still there to be won?
Yeah, you know what I'd love, and it has worked for him. He's won a premiership coaching from the boundary line. But I was watching him, and there was a lot of cutaways that went to him, and he was just sort of standing there almost like a spectator, like a fan in the crowds. And then it panned up to the Sydney box, and Longmire's there with Dean Cox, and they got the vision. He's got all his assistant coaches there, and they're making moves. So Logan McDonald goes forward. Parker comes in and plays on ball. They're switching between Warner and they're getting some rotation going through half forward and midfield. And Craig McRae's just sort of standing there just barracking on the side. So I'd love to see him perhaps see if you can coach tactically. Get up to the coach's box where you can actually see the ground because you've lost that edge. You've lost the aura from coming from behind and winning in close games and start getting up there with your assistants and making some moves.
We're about to get to North Melbourne against West Coast shortly, but when I was watching this game, I was reminded of an Amy classic clanger back from 2010.
After the 5th bounce, I was absolutely no hope of passing it. 6, 7 bounces, and I reckon I sold the Canyon Darren Glass. Now, it was worth about $2, and I sold it for about $4.50. As soon as I kicked it, my hands were nearly up, so I thought it was a goal, and the ball just faded. The ball hits the post, and my initial thought was, no way, I've just cost myself goal of the year. The letdown of the crowd as well, they're all up. Then it was just like
You can watch the full Amy Classic Clangers series
Hardest
on the
player ever played on.
social accounts. Really?
Hardest player I've ever played on. Freak.
Well, there was a classic clanger in Tasmania today, and it came from North Melbourne because they had this game won against West Coast. Late in the game, they were 4 goals up. You can see they're 19 points up with just over 5 minutes to go. How did they lose this?
Even the dead rubber in Tassie's delivering, isn't it? Like, mate, I don't know. Look at this. They kicked 3 goals in, 90 seconds to win this game of football. Oscar Allen was enormous. And you're reminded how good he can be, or how good he is, really, with some of his contested marking, as good a contested mark as there is in football. So we see his ability to finish here. Everything went through for them. Oh, and just heartbreak for North Melbourne, who I thought the last 2 weeks were really important for them because to that point they'd won 2 games and you thought, well, they've actually not improved from last year. So they got to beat West Coast, they got to beat Richmond, they ticked the first box, and to not get this done after being 35 points up, plus 17 entries, I think it was, they win contested footy, dominate uncontested, every stat you would want to win, they won. but once again, they have a culture where they're not hard enough on each other to make sure you put these games away.
Well, Harley Reid delivers a moment every weekend, it seems like. He is our moment of the week. Have a look at this, Brad. It puts him in the Mark of the Year contention, and he is eligible for that.
Yeah, must watch. I mean, he's kept us watching the Eagles. He's been the only one this year. I mean, I'm pleased for Jared Schofield as well.
Does he get the gig?
Not an easy job. I'm always hesitant to give it to caretaker coaches. Seen a lot that haven't worked. The odd one will work, but with everyone that he's denying the job, I mean, he's going to be hard to beat, so he'll go through the process, but he's done a really good job, and the players have responded to him.
He certainly has. All right, let's have a look at the ladder now, because things are really getting tight at the top. So Sydney, you'd have to think, seals the minor premiership with their win on Friday night, but from there, anything goes, because Carlton's only just hanging on, but they could still make the top 4.
Well, you've spent the last hour and a half on the ladder predictor. I've been watching you, and you've been changing and
I still don't know.
Shuffling the order. Where'd your top 4 land?
I had Sydney. I had the Giants missing, I think. I had Geelong in there.
You had Brisbane and you had the Western Bulldogs.
I had the Western Bulldogs, yeah.
So
but to be honest, who would know?
That was the final version. There was 7 or 8 other versions that we had going on throughout the night. And there's the bottom half.
Hawthorn's the only team that can make it.
Hawthorn's the only team that can make it there. So we know that Melbourne are done. Even though Gold Coast won, they're done. And the Bombers and the Pies with their losses are finished. There's the rest of the round, and all eyes on the MCG for the early game.
Yeah, Carlton Hawthorn is going to be an elimination final in August. That one is going to be absolutely fantastic. Richmond and St Kilda at Marvel Stadium later in the day, and Adelaide against the Western Bulldogs. A few Bulldogs fans I know and good mates with are a bit nervous going into that one, but they're the form team of the country.
They are. Last time they played in Adelaide, Port Adelaide taught them a lesson. Isaac Rankin back into the Adelaide side. He's their most important player, so big boost for them.
What a day.
Huge day. The best day we've had this year, which says something because it's been an unbelievable season.
Thank you for your time, Kane. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
For the best and most comprehensive wrap of each round, Access All Areas is the show for you. Unpacking all the action and dissecting the big news from each round. Access All Areas, thanks to Crypto.com, Mondays on AFL.com.au and the AFL Live app.